The moment you decide to take full ownership of your life, everything begins to change. Most people spend years waiting for someone else to rescue them. A better boss, a kinder partner, a lucky break, or a new beginning. But life doesn't work that way. The truth is, no one is coming to save you. The day you realize that you are the author of your story, not a supporting character in someone else's, is the day your real life begins. Ownership is not a feeling, it's a decision. It means saying, whatever happens, I'm responsible for what I do with it. That mindset transforms victims into victors and complainers into creators. Responsibility is not a burden. It's freedom disguised as discipline. When you take responsibility, you stop giving away your power to excuses. You stop saying, it's because of them, or it's not my fault. You start asking a different question, what can I do about it? That question alone shifts your entire reality. Because responsibility doesn't just mean accepting blame. It means embracing control. It's realizing that while you can't change every circumstance, you can always choose your response, your effort, your focus, your attitude. That's the foundation of true power. When you own your life, you stop living reactively and start living intentionally. You begin to see that every choice, even the smallest one, shapes who you are becoming. Every morning you decide whether you will create momentum or let the world dictate your direction. People who take ownership don't wait for motivation, they act out of commitment. They understand that accountability is not punishment, it's empowerment. It means you're the captain of your ship, steering it through both storms and calm waters, not blaming the wind for where it takes you. Taking responsibility also demands honesty, brutal, humbling honesty. You have to face your own flaws, your mistakes, your patterns. And that's uncomfortable because it's easier to point fingers than to look in the mirror. But that mirror is your greatest teacher. Once you stop running from the truth and start owning it, you gain the power to change it. Responsibility transforms weakness into wisdom, shame into strength. The person who takes full ownership becomes unstoppable, not because life gets easier, but because they get stronger. Ultimately, ownership is the first act of maturity and the foundation of self-respect. When you take responsibility for your choices, your emotions, and your direction, you stop being a passenger in your own story. You stop drifting and you start leading. You understand that while you can't control everything that happens to you, you are absolutely in control of what happens within you. That realization is liberation, because once you take ownership, life no longer feels like something happening to you. It becomes something happening for you. And that right there is where real transformation begins. Comparison is one of the most silent destroyers of human potential. It seeps in quietly, disguised as harmless curiosity. We scroll through someone else's highlight reel, we look at another person's success, their beauty, their confidence, and we start measuring our worth through their reflection. What begins as admiration soon turns into quiet self-doubt. Without realizing it, we start to believe that our life, our timing, or even our personality isn't enough. But here's the truth. The moment you begin to live by comparison, you begin to lose connection with who you truly are. You trade authenticity for imitation, and no imitation ever feels whole. When you compare yourself to others, you're comparing your behind the scenes to someone else's final cut. You don't see their failures, their loneliness, their sacrifices, only their results. And that illusion breeds resentment. It convinces you that everyone else has it figured out except you. But no one truly has it figured out. Everyone's fighting their own hidden battles, carrying invisible weights, and stumbling through uncertainty just like you. The difference is, some people have learned to walk their own path without constantly looking sideways. That's the secret, not perfection, but focus. Your journey is meant to be yours. The way you think, grow, struggle, and evolve, it's all designed for the person you're becoming. When you chase someone else's path, you abandon your own. You end up living a second-hand life, one that might look successful on the outside but feels empty on the inside. The tragedy of comparison is that it blinds you to your own gifts. You start to question your worth instead of cultivating it. You stop asking, "What makes me unique?" and start wondering, "Why am I not like them?" And that question alone robs you of peace. Freedom begins the moment you stop comparing and start creating. The antidote to comparison is self-awareness, the understanding that your value is not dependent on recognition, applause, or validation. It's intrinsic, it's already there. You don't need to be someone else to be enough. You need to become the fullest version of yourself. Every time you focus on your own growth, you pull energy back into your control. Every time you celebrate someone else's success without letting it diminish your own, you rise above the ego and step into maturity. The truth is, comparison is a distraction and identity is a direction. You can't move forward while constantly looking sideways. The greatest people in history didn't succeed by trying to match someone else's story. They created their own. So stop competing for validation in a race that doesn't exist. Instead, build a life that feels honest, meaningful, and yours. Because when you stop comparing, you finally start living. And that's when your true identity, unshaken, original, powerful, begins to shine through. One of the greatest mistakes we make in life is believing that our journey must resemble someone else's. We grow up surrounded by invisible blueprints, the expectations of family, society, and culture, all whispering the same message: follow the path everyone else has taken and you'll be safe. But safety isn't fulfillment. The truth is, your path was never meant to look like anyone else's because your soul isn't like anyone else's. You were born with a unique combination of experiences, strengths, and challenges that are shaping you into someone one of a kind. Trying to live by another person's map will only lead you to destinations that were never meant to be yours. Every person you admire has walked a road paved with their own mistakes, struggles, and timing. You can be inspired by them, but you can't copy them. Inspiration gives direction, imitation creates distortion. Your growth has its own rhythm. It moves at the speed your lessons require. Some people bloom early, others bloom later, and that's okay. You might be taking longer not because you're lost, but because your foundation needs to be stronger. Your timing isn't off, it's yours. Comparing your step to someone else's sprint is the quickest way to rob yourself of peace. The truth is, your journey is unfolding exactly as it should. When you understand that your path is personal, you stop chasing approval and start listening to intuition. You stop asking, "What should I do like them?" and start asking, "What feels right for me?" That shift is everything. The moment you trust your own instincts more than the crowd's opinions, you begin to live authentically, and authenticity is what gives life meaning. Because when you walk your path honestly, with conviction and integrity, you might not always be understood, but you'll always be aligned. You'll find a sense of calm that no validation can replace. Walking your own path also means facing your own storms. The road less traveled is rarely smooth. There will be moments when you feel alone, misunderstood, or even foolish for not following the majority. But remember this, every great breakthrough in history came from someone who dared to take a different road. Those who changed the world didn't do it by fitting in. They did it by standing firm in who they were. So when doubt creeps in, remind yourself, you're not behind, you're simply building something original. The resistance you face is proof that you're not repeating history, you're creating it. In the end, the only path worth walking is the one that brings you closer to truth, your truth. Because when you honor your path, even the failures carry meaning. Every setback becomes a stepping stone, every delay a divine redirection. You'll realize that purpose isn't found in reaching the same destination as others, but in fully living your own story. So stop apologizing for your pace, Stop shrinking to fit someone else's pattern. Your path isn't supposed to look like theirs, it's supposed to look like yours. And that's what makes it beautiful, irreplaceable, and profoundly yours. Freedom, real, authentic freedom, is not the absence of restraint. It is the presence of responsibility. Most people say they want freedom, but what they truly want is comfort disguised as choice, because freedom is expensive not in money but in courage. To live freely means to walk away from what's familiar, from what feels safe, and to step into the uncertainty of what's possible. And that takes guts. It's easy to conform, to follow, to blend in with the expectations of the crowd. It's far harder to say, "This is my life, and I will live it on my terms." But that's where freedom begins, the moment you choose truth over approval. Courage and freedom are inseparable. You can't have one without the other. To be free, you must be brave enough to disappoint people who don't understand your path. You must risk being misunderstood, criticized, even rejected. Because freedom doesn't ask for permission, it asks for conviction. It's the quiet rebellion of the soul that says, "I refuse to betray myself for acceptance." It's standing tall in a world that tries to make you small. It's doing what's right, even when it's unpopular. True courage is not about facing external battles. It's about winning the internal ones, the fear of failure, the need for validation, the terror of being seen as different. Most people stay trapped not because the world has caged them, but because fear has. Fear of judgment, fear of loss, fear of standing alone. But what they don't realize is that the walls that imprison them are often built by their own thoughts. Freedom requires the courage to break those mental chains, to step out of the prison of what will they think, and into the open field of what do I believe. That shift changes everything. When you stop trying to please everyone, you start living honestly. And honesty, even when it costs you, is the highest form of liberation. Courage doesn't mean you're not afraid. It means you act despite fear. Every act of bravery chips away at the illusion of limitation. The more you choose courage, the more freedom you create, not just for yourself, but for everyone watching you. Because courage is contagious. When you live fearlessly, you give others permission to do the same. You become a mirror of possibility. People begin to see that life can be lived differently, not in chains of conformity, but in the clarity of authenticity. That's the kind of freedom that moves humanity forward. At the end of the day, freedom isn't given, it's claimed. It's earned through choices that demand integrity, strength, and truth. The road to freedom is not paved with ease, it's carved with courage. Every time you choose honesty over comfort, action over fear, and purpose over approval, you are declaring to the universe, "I am free." And in that declaration lies power, the power to live a life that is not borrowed, not dictated, not silenced, but fully and unapologetically yours. Fulfillment is not found in applause, approval, or attention. It's found in alignment. Most people spend their lives chasing validation, mistaking it for purpose. They build their dreams around the opinions of others, seeking to be seen rather than to be true. But validation is a mirage. The closer you get, the further it moves. You can have 1,000 people cheering for you and still feel empty inside if you're not aligned with who you really are. Real fulfillment begins when your actions, values, and purpose are in harmony, when what you do reflects who you are and what you believe in. That's the kind of peace that can't be faked or taken away. Validation is external, alignment is internal. Validation is like sugar. It gives you a quick rush, a temporary high, and then leaves you craving more. But alignment is nourishment. It sustains you, strengthens you, and brings lasting meaning. When you live for validation, your life becomes a performance and yourself. Worth becomes dependent on the reaction of the crowd. But when you live in alignment, your peace is not up for negotiation. You no longer need the world to agree with your choices, because you've learned to trust your own compass. That's when life begins to feel lighter, more intentional, more real. The danger of chasing validation is that it pulls you away from your truth. You start saying yes when you mean no, pretending to be fine when you're not, and compromising your values to fit in. Slowly, you lose touch with yourself, and that's the greatest loss of all. But the moment you choose alignment, everything changes. You stop living reactively and start living deliberately. You begin to make choices that serve your growth, not your ego. You realize that your worth was never meant to be proven, it was meant to be lived, and that realization frees you from the exhausting cycle of trying to be enough for everyone else. Fulfillment doesn't come from being admired, it comes from being authentic. It's the quiet joy of knowing that you are walking your own path, even when it's hard. It's waking up each day knowing that your energy, your work, and your love are being directed towards something that matters to you. When you are aligned, even the smallest tasks feel purposeful, because they're connected to something larger than approval. They're connected to meaning. Validation fades when the applause stops. Alignment endures because it's anchored in truth. At the end of your life, you won't remember how many people liked your posts, praised your decisions, or approved of your dreams. You'll remember how deeply you lived, how authentically you loved, and how courageously you stayed true to yourself. Fulfillment isn't about being accepted by the world, it's about accepting yourself. When your inner world aligns with your outer actions, you don't need validation to feel valuable. You already know who you are, and that knowledge, that peace, is what true freedom and fulfillment look like.